Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to another video and welcome back to another transfer targets video. Of course, Boxing Day is just round the corner now. With the midweek deadline, it's very much exciting. Full flow of FPL season. We're going to go through the transfer targets for this game week, and we're also going to put a bit of sort of time into looking at the transfer targets to replace the injured Bukayo Saka.
Okay then, yeah, so after a whirlwind of a game week 17, some crazy high scores, we're coming into this game week with really short turnaround, as Ben mentioned. So for a bit of context, we're recording this on Sunday night, about 9 p.m. So we've seen all the Premier League games from game week 17, and hopefully we'll be able to pick some good transfer targets for you guys to go ahead and get into your teams. Starting off first, we're going to look at defenders. I say defenders, it's going to be just Trent this week because it's such a short turnaround. If you want to look at some cheaper alternatives, I recommend you go check out last week's video just about defenders, because we spoke literally a whole video in depth about them. So yeah, check that out if you need a few cheaper options. But Trent Alexander-Arnold, obviously he got an assist against Spurs in that absolute mental game, 6-3. What a game that was. Leicester at home this week, West Ham away at the weekend. Some two good fixtures there from a clean sheet potential and potentially attacking potential too. United at home is a white fixture. That's not my bias. That's what FPL actually put it down as. For me, that is a green fixture at the moment. What's your thoughts on Trent, Ben? Do you think he's a must-own asset? Because that's what it seemed to feel like in the community at the moment.
Yeah, there's a strong feeling that he is eventually going to become must-own, and I do agree sort of to a point, but we have been waiting for a long time for this mega haul to come, and it just doesn't seem to have come his way so far. Like, the attacking potential is there, but it seems to be one big chance involvement a game, and if he gets that big chance involvement, it results in a goal and an assist for him. But also from the defensive standpoint, they are letting in a couple of goals. So Trent's ceiling's almost sort of been hampered a little bit because he hasn't had as many big chance involvements as he has had in previous years. Like, it's very easy to go on and say, yeah, must have after a really good assist in game week 17. But I don't think you should be repping up your teams to bring him in. But he is an option, in my opinion, mainly because of that Saka injury. There's no one around his price point at that price. Everyone's going to have free funds, and they're going to look at the more premium defenders. It's just natural. So I get why people are looking towards it. But in terms of must have, I wouldn't say must have, just a good option. Okay, and to move on into the midfield, and this is where we're going to start talking about Bukayo Saka replacements. If you are looking to free up a load of funds to potentially use on premiums elsewhere, Diallo is probably sort of one of the better options at that sort of £5 to £5.5 million price point. He is getting the minutes under Amorim, which is really important, and he is one of probably the two standout players so far this season under this new management change. And the one thing to note really is the consistency of Manchester United at the moment is not there, and I think that's going to take a little while. Josh will probably sort of be able to speak on this better than I will, but for the price point, good, but there's going to be inconsistencies there in that United performance, and that will hamper the impact that Ahmad will have from an FPL perspective.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying there. We obviously saw it against Bournemouth. I do think Bournemouth are a really good side. You know, they've beaten Arsenal, City, some really good teams at home this season. So I don't think it's necessarily a shock that they did come and beat United. They beat United 3-0 at Old Trafford a couple of years ago. The issue here is that United going forwards can be so hit and miss, and I think we saw a big miss against Bournemouth. They created a lot of chances, but the cutting edge wasn't quite there. Like the Amad Diallo opportunities were, shots from outside the box. The box is heavily congested with defenders. We didn't see that sort of, openness compared to that City game that we saw maybe a week ago. So I still think he is a good option. United's fixtures are okay. I think if you're looking at him as an 8th attacker or like a 7th, 8th attacker, so you've got maybe Enzo and him or Rodgers and him, I don't mind that too much. But for me, playing him every week, it just wouldn't be what I would go for. I think there is a chance of rotation as well, given that Amorim seems to rotate most weeks. I know he's an important player for United, but I just only see that, one of these games, maybe Newcastle at home, even Wolves away, potentially, we could see a rotation slightly. But he is a minutes monster in terms of he's only been benched once under Amorim. So it's just difficult to say at the moment. For me, I do think Bruno Fernandes is the better pick at United, and I think potentially there's better value at the same price point. Okay, then, so we're going to look at a slightly more expensive but still a cheap option to replace Bukayo Saka with. Obviously, at the time of recording, we don't know for sure that he's out, but it looks highly likely he's going to miss that Ipswich game, so hence why we're going through all of this. But yeah, Ismaila Sarr, obviously, he's come off the back of a massive haul against Brighton and then a goal against Arsenal, so he's in really hot form at the moment. Bournemouth away this week. I wouldn't say he's the best entry point, as I just mentioned about Ahmad. Bournemouth this season have been a really solid side, and you can see that from the Premier League table. Southampton at home the week after, though, looks really nice. And then Chelsea at home, I'd still, back into score, because Crystal Palace at the moment, they actually looked quite decent, I thought, going forwards against Arsenal. They caused them some real problems, especially in the first half. Ismaila Sarr was a big part of that. He's got 7 attacking returns so far this season, but the thing that stood out to me when I was making these graphics is the 16 big chance involvements. This is like along the lines of, really close to like Nicholas Jackson, for example, players like that, Alexander Isak. So he's getting involved in a lot of the main play for Crystal Palace. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think he's probably the best pick at that price?
Yeah, if you're looking at form, and if you're a form-based manager, then Sar's the easy pick to go for. A lot of managers will be put off just because they're investing sort of so little into him after spending so much on Bukayo Saka. But the underlying stats are really decent, and the big chance involvement's huge. I don't think there's too much wrong with it. There's reservations from my perspective just on the consistency sometimes of Crystal Palace going forwards, and that's something to bear in mind. And I think you're always going to have those reservations for player that's not necessarily in a top 10 team that you're looking to invest in. But as Josh said with Ahmad, and I think the point stands, if you're looking sort of at a 7/8 attacker, then I really don't see an issue with it, because the next couple of fixtures aren't too bad at all. And you can, bench him on the odd given week as well for Rodgers. So yeah, really don't mind him as a pick. Okay, so next up, as we spoke about, Morgan Rogers is probably my favourite between the £5 and £5.5 million range in terms of his output, his minutes, his goal contributions for Aston Villa. He's really come on leaps and bounds for this team, and the fixtures coming up aren't too bad either for Aston Villa. They've got through a little bit of a sort of tougher patch, and Rogers has still been sort of putting the output out in terms of getting FPL points, ticking along sort of once every 4 game weeks with a haul, which you can't ask for much more than that, to be honest, from an asset that is just 5.3 million. Josh, Rogers is in my team. Is that someone that you'd pick out to look to bring into your own one?
Yeah, he's on my team, just sadly on the bench for Gameweek 17, which wasn't ideal. I think that's the case with him, though. Like, I don't mind having points on the bench with him, and I think that could happen most weeks. A lot of managers get frustrated when there's points on the bench. I see it as quite a positive, because at the end of the day, you're picking players that are still returning. I probably wouldn't have started him with the midfield that I have personally last week, and hence why he was on my bench. But I think going forwards, he's a solid option. The fixtures are becoming a lot nicer for Aston Villa, and I think, as like you said, like we've mentioned so far with Sarr and Ahmad, maybe someone like a João Pedro as well. These sorts of guys, if you can rotate them in and out and play them for their better fixtures, chances are you're going to get, the hauls in your starting 11. So, yeah, I think he's a really nice option. I'm not sure if he's my favourite out of the lot. I think it's quite a close call between them all. But I think maybe if it was in 2 weeks' time when our entry point is Leicester, I think that'll be the place where, if you haven't got him, I'd be trying to bring him in. Okay then, so we're going to hike it up in price a little bit. We're going to Bryan Mbuemo next, and he's been a regular in most people's FPL teams so far this season. Probably a lot of you have recently sold him, to be honest. Obviously, I know me and Ben sold him quite a few weeks ago now, when he was, averaging low shots per game, which hasn't really improved too much, to be honest. I know he's been picking up a couple of goals here and there, got one against Chelsea, obviously blank last week. But he is a talisman still for this Brentford side. The fixtures are going to get a little bit nicer as well. I think Brighton at the moment are quite a good team to face. They just seem to be leaking chances pretty much in that defence, so wouldn't worry about that. Obviously, Arsenal's not ideal, but then you get a Southampton game right after. So, yeah, for me, I think he's a decent option. The main draw here is that he's on set pieces, penalties, the lot. He's gonna really sort of warrant a pick in your team pretty much most weeks. And obviously, we know that he plays almost all the minutes for Brentford as well. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, the minutes is obviously going to be a big appeal, especially over this sort of busy period that we've got coming up. And I do think, yes, he's sort of overperformed massively on some of the data that he, we expected him to produce. But that is usually the case with someone that's a sort of talismanic figure. If he can sort of push the stats up back towards what he was producing at the start of the season, because he had a bit of a lull, then yeah, I don't see any reason why not. I think he's probably one of the safer picks to go for in terms of a replacement for Saka. So if you're looking to be sort of a bit conservative and maintain rank, then I think Bryan Mbuemo is a very good option. Okay, so next up is an option that is actually really exciting and maybe a little bit short term in terms of if you're looking for high ceiling, high reward. Obviously, a little bit of high risk in Diogo Jota. Of course, he hasn't had too many minutes, but he's picked up sub appearances in the last two fixtures. Of course, got that goal in the Fulham game, got some returns. So he has been so consistent when he gets minutes for Liverpool, almost matching the output of Salah in terms of minutes per expected goal involvement. So he is really good when he does get the minutes, if he does get the minutes, which is the key sticking point really with him. But with those three really nice fixtures coming up, it's almost worth that consideration and risk, right, Josh?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think for me, it's maybe a week too soon, I think, on Diogo Jota. I know a lot of managers will be looking to potentially bring him in for this Leicester at home game. He came on around the 66th minute, I think, against Spurs, which is, a decent amount of minutes and the amount of minutes you probably expect him to get at the moment. I'm just unsure whether he sort of takes the place of Gakpo and Diaz at the moment. They've both been playing really, really well. And I just don't know if that slot will sort of change that. But then saying that, there's only 3 or 4 days until the next game and there could be due some rotation. So it's a tough one. I think it takes a real risky manager to take the pick. But, the ceiling is really much there. When we see Diogo Jota start a game, chances are he tends to get an FPL return in that game. Leicester at home is a prime fixture. Leicester have conceded over 80 shots in the first 4 games under Ruud van Nistelrooy, which is absolutely remarkable. So yeah, if there's a fixture to target, it's definitely going to be that one. Okay, so a Liverpool attacker that I'm a little more fond of is going to be Luis Diaz. He is a slightly bit more expensive than Diogo Jota at 7.4 million, but the key thing here is that he has been starting. In his last 2 games, he got 90 minutes and 87 minutes. 7 goals, 3 assists so far this season. Obviously, he is overperforming his data, but you probably expect that of a Liverpool attacker in this, free-flowing scoring side at the moment. Leicester at home, West Ham away. I just think these fixtures are good, and I think you'll be really hard done by not to get 2 starts in those games, considering how well he's been playing at the moment, especially through the middle as well, which is obviously a new position that we've seen Diaz play so far this season. What is good about him as well is that he's versatile. He can play left, right, or down the middle. So, you'd hope that he'd get a few more minutes due to that ability. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think he's a slightly better pick than Jota, or do you think it's, a more high risk and reward with Jota?
It's so dependent on what you're looking for really in this asset. I think Diaz is probably for the medium term like a better pick, but if you're looking sort of in isolation of these next 2 fixtures we've got coming up, I'd argue Jota's probably got potential of getting just as many minutes, just down to the fact that there is going to be rotation. We've seen Slot rotate those players outside of Salah, especially in those sort of front 4 areas of the pitch. So yeah, I think Luis Diaz is a fantastic option. He's been playing up front, which adds a new dimension to what he can produce and the ceiling that he can get to. But yeah, it's a difficult one between all the Liverpool attackers, because I think in an ideal world you want 2 of them, because you're not making too many gains at the moment from Salah because everyone has him captain. So you're going to want to make some gains somewhere, and I think someone like Diaz or Jota, one of those 2 is going to sort of make or break the success of that transfer. One's going to do really well and probably get a double-digit haul in one of the, if not 2 of the 2 next games, and the other one may get 1 point in both. There's going to be huge swings in this decision. So if you're going for safety, Diaz. If you're going for really high ceiling, Jota, right? Okay, so next up is Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United. As Josh mentioned, he preferred him over Ahmad, and I do as well, because of the involvement that he has in this Manchester United team, on set pieces, on penalties as well, so you can't complain too much about that. And that's almost the key with an inconsistent Manchester United team at the moment, is that those sort of set pieces, penalties, they're always sort of going to come around for Manchester United, whether or not they're playing well. And Bruno will profit off them and will gain a lot of bonus points off the back of that as well, which we've seen start this season so far. Josh, I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about Bruno Fernandes as a Manchester United fan. Is that one that you're sort of looking at?
Yeah, own him at the moment. I've owned him for a few weeks now, so I think for me he is a solid option. When you're looking at all the other options around, as a replacement of Saka, for me at the moment he's the best one. Wolves away this week, I think it's a decent fixture to target. I know obviously they got a new manager and look good against Leicester, but I think Leicester's a little bit different to United. Newcastle at home, I don't think that's too bad of a fixture either, and obviously Liverpool away is not ideal. After that, United then go on a good run again where they face like Southampton and Brighton. So I think long term, Bruno is one of those players that you're not going to want to transfer in for 2 or 3 weeks and then try and sell again. You're going to need to hold him for a sustained period of time to get those returns. Before game week 17, he was the second highest point scorer in FPL behind Mohamed Salah since game week 10. So he has been on a bit of form since Ten Hag's left. Obviously, we didn't see that against Bournemouth, but for me, I think the returns are there. Probably unlucky not to get a return against Bournemouth. He had like 0.85 expected goal involvement. So, yeah, he's involved. I think even if he plays in the double pivot, it's even better for him because then his assist threat goes through the roof compared to when he's playing in one of those 10 areas. I think it doesn't really matter where he is on the pitch. He's always involved, and that's what us FPL managers really, really want. Okay then, so the final midfield pick that we're going to suggest in this video, by all means there are others as well, but we haven't got enough time in the day to be honest to go through all of them. So yeah, Phil Foden's on this list, 808 minutes played so far, a massive underperformance in data. We saw him score his first Premier League goal of the season in added time against Aston Villa. I've owned him this season, which is probably says enough about my rank. It wasn't pretty sort of visiting him at the moment. I think the main thing you're going to be targeting here is the fixtures and whether you think that Phil Foden and Manchester City can turn this awful rot around. I know a lot of you probably think that will never happen. What's your thoughts, Ben?
Oh, I think it's a difficult one because I think, if you're looking at just fixtures in isolation and sort of previous history, this pick makes sense for managers to move from Saka to Foden. It's just the form has been so bad, and even the underlying data, he may have been sort of underperforming, but not to a huge extent because the numbers are not great either, which is sort of all the more worrying. So a lot of managers are going to steer fairly clear of Phil Foden just because of the form, but I could quickly see if he gets even an assist in that Everton game and looks half decent, price will sort of go up by 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 over the next sort of few weeks because that Leicester game, there should be some returns there for any Manchester City asset. So, yeah, it's a difficult one for a lot of managers, but for now, it's almost a case of, again, maybe a week too soon to move on this. Okay, so a man who is in fantastic form, particularly over the last 2 games that he's played for Arsenal, is Gabriel Jesus. He was fantastic against Crystal Palace away last game week. And with the injury to Bukayo Saka, it almost means that Jesus should be guaranteed a few more minutes going forward for Arsenal. The fixture run is decent. I think that Ipswich a home fixture on Boxing Day, on Thursday or Friday, is it, that Arsenal play? Should be fantastic for him. My thinking is that, for the striker position, there's not going to be too many sort of moves made up there unless you've got 2 or 3 or even 4 free transfers. But if you did have an issue in the striker position, say Cunha gets his ban, I don't think it's a bad shout to look at Jesus. What's your thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, to be honest, he's really impressed me since I watched him in both those Palace games. He just looked clinical against Palace in the Premier League game, especially. Unlucky not to get a hat trick. Obviously, he got the assist instead. It might be a knee jerk potentially. You might look back at this in 2 weeks' time and thinking, "Why on earth have I brought Gabriel Jesus into my FPL team?" But for me, if you've got an issue like Acuna, or if you're not keen on keeping João Pedro or something like that, a sideways move up to Gabriel Jesus could be the move. Ipswich at home's fantastic. Brentford away, I'd argue, is just as good. Like defensively so far this season, they've been really poor. Even Brighton, as I just mentioned earlier, like they're not a bad team to face right now. You've got 3 really good fixtures with a number 9 from Arsenal who's scoring goals, which is not something we've been able to say all season long. So for me, I really like the pick, and if you've got that sort of option to go to him, I don't see a reason why not to. Okay, then, so that wraps up our Game Week 18 transfer targets, and more specifically, our Saka replacements video. Let us know who your Saka replacement is going to be in the comment. We didn't really mention someone like Martin Odegaard. Probably, I know a lot of people are looking at him as well. For me, he's just probably not as efficient as Saka in terms of FPL points. What's your thoughts on Odegaard, just as a quick one, Ben?
Yeah, like I think like from the way he's been playing this season, the output just hasn't been there even with Saka in the team. The only case you could make is maybe the potential of penalties, but yeah, not sort of the sort of as good. And there's to be honest, there's like not loads and loads and loads of options available. So yeah, I think if you're looking for Arsenal coverage, why not? But you know they've been struggling a little bit from open play so far this season, and that's sort of down to the form of Odegaard in particular with that. But yeah, that rounds off the video. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL graduates. And as always, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.